Joining us on this episode is Angela Shae. Angela is a wedding photographer turned entrepreneur based in Orange County. After years in the business, hustling for her place in the wedding industry, and success in her market, while also being a mom, she stepped away from wedding photography to build social templates. What began as organically helping creatives in her community turned into a full resource and support-driven platform designed to streamline the minutia of the social content process. I'm Kyle Wilson, and this is The Photographer's Problem. I was just re-looking at all of the stuff that you guys have going on, and it's such a cool project. And I think that I'd love for you to kind of right at the top kind of explain, because I know, but just for anybody listening, and then we can kind of dive into how it all came to be, but just how what you're making and what you're hoping, well, not hoping, but what you're seeing people use it for and what its benefits are.
So we create reel templates for photographers, and it is the fastest, easiest way to create and post reels on Instagram right now in 2024. There are obviously other apps out there that help with creating reels, but what makes us different is that we are not an app. We are a community right inside of Instagram. So when you sign up with us, you get access to a private Instagram account that houses all the templates that we create. So we build and create the templates right inside of Instagram using Instagram's native features, using the trending audios that are trending on Instagram, and everything is stored and held together inside a private account that our members get access to. And then we release new templates every single week. So every week we promise between 7 to 10 new reel templates. Usually it's more on the side of like 12 to 14, depending on how inspired I'm feeling. But there's always fresh new content for photographers to use. It's plug and play. Photographers say it takes them seconds to create and post a reel. Obviously sometimes it takes a little longer if you're trying to figure out what type of content you're using. But many photographers are able to create and post a reel before they even get home from an event, which is insane. Like you walk to your car, you're able to post a little sneak peek of what you shot today. So that's basically what we're doing. We're simplifying reel creation for photographers, taking the overwhelm out of it, and doing all the boring and tedious work for them. All they're doing is just populating their content.
Yeah, I think the way you're doing it is really interesting with the private account and just like using Instagram's real template feature to your benefit. When you just, I'd be interested how that started. Like, were you sitting in a coffee shop one day and you went, oh my gosh, this is neat. What if I made a private account and then I could sell this stuff? Like, did it start there, or was that later in the like, oh wait, I want to do this thing, but I don't know how to do it, and that became it?
I wish that was my story. I wish I just like one day came up with it really easily, but that's my story is way more complex than that. I was actually a wedding photographer myself for over a decade. So I was shooting weddings, walked away from that, was taking a break. And during that time, other photographers were asking me to manage their social media for them. So since I wasn't shooting, I was running a bunch of accounts for photographers, preset companies, styling mats, things like that. And we were doing 20 accounts at a time per month. So that is a lot of content for me to have
Yeah,
to
it's huge.
prepare like a month in advance. So I would batch content a month for all these 20 accounts. So basically, by the time I'm done batching one, it's time to like restart. It was
And were you signing in and actually posting it for them too, or were you just prepping it as like a package and giving it? Okay, so you're just
no,
like,
yeah, like posting, creating everything, writing every
wow.
single caption, figuring out what wedding they're shooting this weekend to post, engagement photos from that session. It was a ton of work, and I was building an agency at the time so that kind of all had like parts to do. Like, okay, you're tagging all the photos, and that was literally somebody's job to go through and tag all the vendors, add the hashtags. And so like, it kind of worked like a machine, but it was still a lot of work. And that's also about the time when TikTok was competing with Instagram or I guess Instagram was competing with TikTok. They were trying to buy them out, and that didn't happen. So they're like, we're going to launch our own version. And so then everybody wanted reels, and our clients wanted reels. And so we started trying to figure out what's the easiest way to batch reels and create a lot of reels for all these different creatives. And we were manually creating reels for each one of our clients, which was an insane amount of work. And so then I was like, okay, well, what if I do, like a sister company or something where it's like not our agency, but we are creating this content for photographers. So the first version I launched of this idea, this is before the Instagram use template feature was even a thing. Like nobody knew that was going to happen. But basically, I built out a Shopify store with sample templates, and you could go into the store and you could look at all the different sample templates. And if you liked the audio, which they were still built off of trending audios on Instagram, but it was like, it got complicated with like posting it and having to link it to the correct audio. But you would pick a template that you like, you would upload all of your content into that order and submit it, pay for it, send it to us, and we would turn it around for photographers in 24 hours. So I had an editor on team, and so the content would come in. We would never know how much content to expect because, sometimes after a weekend there would be like a bunch of reels that would come through, and so it was definitely really hard to manage, but I was like trying to figure out a solution for this. So we were manually flipping these reels around in 24 hours, sending them to photographers, and then, consistently trying to update our gallery to have more options and updating the shop. And so, I mean, obviously I was like, I'm going to kill myself doing this. This is insanity. And I feel like with a lot of businesses, that's kind of what happens is you're trying to find a solution, you're trying different approaches. And that was like our version 1 that we launched. And then within, I think, 6 months, was when the use template feature was released on Instagram, and it all just clicked for me. It was like, all right, this is such an easier way to do it. We were also running into issues where photographers would get their reel that we created for them, and then they would want to change the order of the images, or they would send us a video and we would use like a different part of the video than what they wanted to use. They're like, oh, actually, I don't like how I look there. Can you crop me out? So it was like a lot of, photographers being photographers, and wanting things like really specific. And so I was like, well, if we have a plug and play reel template, they get to choose the order of their images. They can choose which part of the video plays, and, that use template feature. So then, actually, at first I was really disappointed. I was like, well, now everybody can do this, right? I was like, now they use template features available, like, our solution for reels is kind of irrelevant, until I realized that actually it's still hard to build a template from scratch, especially all the beat matching that needs to happen. The beat matching is like super tedious. And photographers are still crazy busy. And so if, trying to figure out if there's a way to, I guess, find that middle ground of like where we come in and we can do the work for them. And it all kind of just like fell into place at the same time. And I was like, okay, this is what we're going to roll with. And it was, I mean, we haven't looked back. It's been almost 2 years, and we're so excited about what we're building and the community. And
And how many people are in your community, or what's your user base size? Like, so just as a perspective, I never dove into the reels. I was thankfully really successful with Instagram before video took off. And then now, since it's really been the main tool, and I'm personally speaking, because I've chosen to not be a full-time photographer, video is not something that I've chosen to educate myself on, mostly because if I can't make video that looks like a Christopher Nolan movie, I'll be mad about it. And so I just choose to not start at all because it would be very square one for me versus photography. But I know that reels are just, man, so freaking huge. We all know this. It's common knowledge at this point. But what's the size of your community of people that are saying, hey, I want to outsource this lane of my creative process. I don't want to do this myself. And there's just not, you might have an external editor or an AI editor or an assistant or whatever it may be. But for something like this, you guys are really unique in that. I'd be interested in how many people are
thank you.
using this.
We have a little bit over 700 users in the community right now. And I feel like it's just been, kind of growing. We're at like a word of mouth point right now where like photographers are like, oh my gosh, I found this solution. You have to try it out. And so that's been like really fun to see.
Yeah, that's incredible. And how do you guys, like, I'd be interested in your, we'll call it research process for like every 3 or 4 days, there's a new trending thing, whether it be DJO is back in Chicago, which I'm so stoked to see as a trending audio, going on, or a style or an approach, or even that like niche trending stuff that kind of originates on TikTok or Reddit or something. How are you guys keeping up with all that?
Manually, like I honestly just have to be completely submerged into that. And right now it's just me doing all the research. But I am able to access, Instagram from different accounts, to make sure that I'm getting like a well-rounded I guess, delivery of like
Yeah, yeah,
content
you're
that
kind
I'm
of seeing,
seeing.
yeah, you're seeing each kind of corner of the
Yeah,
trends.
and so we are just manually researching, bookmarking, trying to figure out what we're going to use, what's doing well, trying to figure out which audios are going to take off. So a lot of it is learning to predict what's going to perform well. And then also with some of the trending audios, they just, even if I were to create a killer template for it, they just won't work for the photo industry. So it's also understanding what is going to do well with the photo industry as far as like, how can they use this audio to connect with their audience? Can we beat match this to have a lot of photos? Because a lot of our templates are very photo heavy because photographers are still, very hesitant with creating a lot of video content, or they just don't have time or they forget. So that's also something we keep in mind when creating these templates is who we are serving. And we are creating, a way for photographers to show up in this video space that is designed for entertainment. And then photographers are showing up on there, trying to market their work, which is kind of, a tricky place to be, because reels are, basically made for just entertainment. You're watching a cooking video and then you're watching, travel vlog. And the next thing you see, somebody's like posting their photo work. So how do you, package images and videos in a way where you can show some behind the scenes and get people interested while they're watching the reel, on their couch, while also watching Netflix and like talking to their kids and scrolling reels. So understanding how reels are being consumed by the viewers and like the space that they're showing up in, and then also educating photographers on like, okay, this is not your portfolio slideshow. Like the purpose of a reel is to be like a lead magnet. And, so I feel like I deviated from your original question, but that kind of all goes into like the research part of it, is understanding where the reel is showing up. How do we package it in a way where photographers will be able to use it? What's trending? What can work well with, our users and their viewers? And, even with serving photographers, there's so many different niches. You go from weddings and, family photos to senior portraits and sport photography and branding shoots and like everything else in between. And we also have had like a wave of wedding planners joining, which is amazing. I feel like wedding planners and florists and like other people in the wedding
Yeah, more,
industry.
more, yeah, more vendors in that one corner of it getting on board.
Yep, yep. So that's,
And
yeah.
you mentioned something. You mentioned something that it's. I think the terminology is called second screen, which I've been seeing pop up with terms like Netflix and HBO and whatnot. They talk about when they're producing TV shows, they have to be cognizant that you're competing for the refrigerator and the phone and just people to get up and walk away versus like in a movie theater where you're locked in. But that being said, it's this kind of screen time epidemic, pandemic, and I'd be really interested, like for you as Angela, like what's your how does this fill into your day? Do you time block out? And you're like, all right, from 11 to 12:30, I'm going to be on my phone and I'm going to be like in brain space research mode. Or do you discover all this from the same way that I am, where I'm like on my couch at times I should be working or sleeping and just scrolling, thumbs up, scrolling endlessly into the night? Or yeah, how does this work in your real life?
So I actually have three kids. I don't know if you knew that. So I have I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a
That
seven
makes it
month
even
old.
harder.
Yeah, so I've got a baby that needs me basically all the time. And the older two I actually homeschool, so they're at home all the time. So I have to be very strategic about how I use my time. And we actually don't even have a TV in the house. It's just like a personal family rule. Like we obviously have screens, but there's not like a TV in front of a couch, where I feel like that would really contribute to a lot of like time just being wasted. Um, but so I guess to answer your question, I do have set times that I sit down, and those are designated to research. And it's usually like once the baby's down. We have set days where we create the templates. So building up, I have research days throughout the week where there's like pockets of time that are set aside for like, okay, I'm researching, I'm, bookmarking things. We're trying to figure out, because we're also hitting different categories every week when we release new reels. There has to be something that's, fun and edgy, and it has like a really like a significant beat. There has to be something slower and romantic. There's something that's very video heavy, something that's photo only. And so like knowing which categories we are trying to hit to make sure that we're serving everyone well. So we're not just, delivering like wedding templates, 10 new wedding templates, and then the rest of our users are like, okay, what do we use? So I have time pockets throughout the day during the week to do the research. And then towards the end of the week, usually Thursday, Friday is when we are actually creating the templates themselves. So, and it
Yeah.
kind of
Do you
just
find that
recycles.
your personal social media time is completely different? For instance, for me, I feel like one of those guys on dating apps where they're like, he doesn't even have a social media because it's just wedding photos. Like, I really don't. I'm tagged and stuff, but I don't really have social media, and so I've kind of always liked that because work is work, and then I haven't needed to do that. I feel like I'm getting that dopamine kick somewhere else. But like, do you still find yourself like being able to be online, social media, participate, or do you completely just work?
So I actually loved and enjoyed social media like before this was work. I had a personal account where I like to share like house things and like, all of our travels, and we travel a ton as a family. And I would share things about the kids. So I always liked being on social media, which I guess why it wasn't really hard for me to like make it my job once like it, transitioned into this from photography. But now that the community is growing so fast and there's like so much research that I need to do, and I want to make sure I'm serving the community well, I definitely feel like my personal account has been completely abandoned. But I only resurrect and appear back in my account when we travel. So I'm like religiously like good at posting while we travel. So travel stuff, I love to document travel content. I feel like that's how I document my own memories. I save highlights. I revisit trips. We'll sit down with the kids and we'll like go through the highlights. Like, oh, remember we took this trip and we did this, and we just did a month in Europe with the family last year, right before we had the baby. And so like every city that we went to was like a highlight, and I love that. And so I feel like if I ever had to walk away from social templates, what it is today, I would probably dive into like sharing travel content and doing something with that, because
Yeah,
I
that's
actually love
amazing. You're
that.
able to use that as kind of like, I'm always fascinated how people will use social media as like a piece of social currency. And so for me, I stopped posting, and then I stopped using stories altogether. And then I realized that Instagram stories is kind of a piece of currency in my social economy. It's how I interact with my friends, and they interact with me and make plans. I hear something's going to happen. But for you, you're using it kind of like internally within your own family as like an archivist approach, which I think is a really cool way of saying, hey, this is how I'm going to use this tool now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, you spend a lot of time on screens and social, and I think that it can have an interesting. I started going to therapy because of Instagram. Like, that was the reason I really began. I went, man, this thing is obsessing my world in a way that I don't like. And so I'm always, whenever I hear people that work specifically in an industry that is so designed around that tool, I'm always intrigued at how you're like operating it within your real life. You know?
I feel like, yeah, in the last year that's also changed. I've been able to really like separate myself. Like like I only go on now and like post when I'm traveling. And so even like throughout the year, I'm so focused on like the work stuff and my other account, that it does help mentally to just like unplug. Like it's almost like I'm taking a social media break, but still being on social media, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm
It's
not
like a
like
social media
emotionally
work break.
yeah, yeah. I'm not like emotionally invested in that anymore.
Yeah. You've been doing this for a while now, a couple of years, you said, plus what you were doing before. Thus far, like, as it's grown and this has become, and your career has changed shapes, what's been the highlight of it all? Like, have you had a big proud moment, like a line in the sand where you're like, that happened, that was so great?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think it was recent. So, we were doing social media. So I've been in the social media space for 7 years. So it's a good amount of time.
Yeah, you're in
Um,
it.
we launched social templates less than 2 years ago, and then also I was pregnant and had a baby, like right, as we were like launching and building this thing. So it definitely felt like a lot of things were happening, and we were building this thing, and people were joining, but it wasn't as fast and as rapid, like of growth until this year, February. We went to WPPI, and it was a very last minute decision to go. And we had our first like trade show experience. We had our booth, and we got to meet people that use social templates already. We got to share with the world what we have created. And I think the most, I guess, like the proudest moment was being there, and showing people how much time it can save them, and like seeing their mind be blown. Like, oh my gosh, like this is attainable. Like I can make reels too now. And, being able to save photographers and creatives so much time and overwhelm that comes with the social media, and being like, yeah, now your evenings after you come back from a shoot, you can unplug, you can be with the family. You don't have to be worried about posting, like creating this perfectly, beat matched reel, because we already did that for you. And so I guess having that like experience of showing it to people in real life and then seeing them just like so excited about what we built, it felt amazing. It felt like, wow, we're like really doing something that's impacting the industry in a really positive way. And like I can't wait to see like, this kind of just keep growing.
Yeah, getting those real life interactions surrounding a tool like that, or what we do at Narrative too. It's something we will have, obviously really wonderful testimonials. People will make videos, stories. I talk to them, but actually being in person and hearing 1 or 5 or 10 or 40 people explain about just how beneficial it is to them and how they couldn't do anything without it. It really validates what you're doing. It makes you feel like, oh, I am on the right path. I am making the right decisions. Have you made any like wrong decisions or pitfalls that you can kind of look back and go, "Oh, I not doing that again. Probably shouldn't have, but hopefully I learned from it."
I feel like that's where, I think everything's a learning experience, but I think launching the agency was probably something I shouldn't have done. So the agency led to this being born, obviously, and I'm like really excited about social templates. So it was part of the journey. But when I had the agency, so I feel like as photographers, or at least for me, I'm not a very good business person when it comes to like managing things and making sure that like my time is compensated well and all the things. So when I was running the agency and we had 20 accounts and I was, hiring people and building out a team, and I had a vision for like what it could look like in the future. But it got to a point where I was paying like everybody in my team more than I was paying myself. So I feel like that was, a bad business decision, where it was like, okay, like I obviously wanted everyone on the team to feel like they were compensated well. And I feel like, as a business owner, you sometimes have to like take those risks and like make those decisions. But at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I've got a family to provide, like to take care of. I am working 14-hour days. I'm not seeing my kids. This feels like there needs to be a lot of restructuring that happens. So that was kind of like the journey that got us here. Um, but that was probably where in my business I was like, I'm not managing really well. And at that point, like I reached out and got a business coach and, started implementing some good practices.
Yeah, do you think that having a business coach was an overall beneficial thing for you? I've spoken with a few people who have either done it, debated it, or are one themselves, and I'm sure that people that are listening here, I think, are maybe at various states in their industry or various states in their career. And do you think that would you do it again, or do you currently still have one?
Yeah, so he's actually one of my really close friends. So it was really, it felt very natural to reach out to a friend that's doing this and that was, happy to help mentor me and guide me. And we still meet regularly. And I think having someone that really understands the ins and outs of like what you're doing, and also cares for you as a human, and is not there just, um, for some sort of gain, that they're just like they care, they want to help, they give you advice. I found it very helpful, especially when somebody's already done this journey. So I think one of the quotes that I like is, "Don't ask someone for directions if they've never been there." Right. So I think I butchered that, but having someone that is very successful give me a very unemotionally charged advice. Right. He is able to just look at things like at numbers and at my business without the emotional attachment to everything that we're doing. And I'm like a highly emotional person today. Like I could feel like I just follow my gut and do things because I feel this way, which I feel like, a lot of creatives are like this. So I definitely feel like it's helpful to have someone from the outside kind of sometimes give you a pep talk, sometimes tell you it's okay, sometimes challenge you and push you. Some conversations are uncomfortable. And if you can't have uncomfortable conversations with your coach, I feel like maybe you need a different coach. Like if somebody's just always trying to be, super friendly and give you only positive advice, it's not helping you grow. So I definitely support it, but I know that not all business coaching is equal. So I think it's finding that person that is able to bring value to your business in that way.
Yeah, I think what you said, having people that will like not that will like not just be friendly but push back on things and even like not sugarcoat things. I know that I'm really open with my friends that are might be like in the cusp of the photo community who are like, hey, I'm trying to figure something out. I'm like, let's go have coffee for 2 hours and I will tell you everything you're doing wrong and what you should be doing instead. And I've really enjoyed that. I don't charge for it or anything. I just want to help some local friends out. But I think that I've always seen that they've really benefited by not the parts that I was friendly and said, oh, you're doing great, but by the parts that said, hey, this area, not so great. Let's fix that. And then chat months later and see that their bookings are up and they're making more money. And I'm like, cool, that's great. And so I think finding any business coach would be like finding a therapist. Like they need to be a little, they can't agree with everything you're saying. And so that's really cool that you've found that and it's been beneficial for you in that way. Are there is there anything you could point to and say that was you had the agency, you stopped the agency, you've now jumped to this template model, which is really cool. You've kind of had a team, you haven't had a team. What one of these things would you say is the best thing that you've done, the thing that has really charged you and said, oh, that's things are going great because I did that?
Well, I feel like there's a couple things I wanted to touch on. Like in so there's stuff that I did before I even got into social templates. I feel like that was very like pivotal in my life. So let's talk about that first. Um, so when I was shooting photography, I was a photographer for over a decade and got so burnt out, was dealing with paralyzing anxiety. And it was, it was so hard for me to even like keep going with what I was doing. It felt like everything I was shooting, I was like hating it. Every shoot I would come back from, I would overthink everything. And the more I shot, the more I felt like I didn't like my work, which, looking back on it was not a reflection of my work at all, but it was like the internal um I was just like destroying myself emotionally. So when I guess like I hit like a point in my career, my journey as a photographer, I was like, I can't keep going like this because I'm just like suffering so much like mentally and emotionally. And my kids were 3 and 5 at the time. We packed up our life, sold our house, and moved to California, moved to a different state. And I took a year-long sabbatical to basically just reset, reassess, and figure out like what I'm doing with my life. And I remember saying like there would never be a day where like I don't want to shoot a wedding. Like I love weddings. I love everything about, people in love and documenting that and sharing stories, and like photography is like my passion and I can never imagine myself not doing it. So walking away was obviously really hard, but that was, I feel like, one of the best things I have ever done for myself, for my family, for my mental health. Taking that year-long sabbatical where I really gave myself space to like just go be on the beach, get some vitamin D because I was originally from Oregon, which we struggle with that department there, and kind of reset everything. And I didn't know what the future was going to look like. And sometimes it's like really scary, right? To be like, okay, we don't know what we're doing after this. Like, thankfully, my husband has always had a steady job, so I'm able to be the reckless one. But kind of not knowing, like, are we going to stay in California? We're here just because we just felt like our family really needed like a reset. We wanted to do a season somewhere like on the beach. We didn't know if we were going to stay. I didn't know what if I was ever going to go back to photography, what that would look like. Would there be different boundaries? Would I be shooting different content? And then accidentally, ending up in the social media space and it leading to where I'm at today, and kind of just like, I guess, like trusting the process. I don't know if that's,
Yeah.
but like
No,
allowing
that's no,
myself.
yeah. I mean, I think I love weddings and I'm always really bummed when I talk to a photographer or any vendor in the industry who speaks so negatively of their career about it, like, oh, I'd never shoot weddings again. And I usually think, well, you probably shouldn't have from the get-go. If you were like a weekend warrior person and only getting fuel from these things in financial incentives rather than loving your client or loving the work. And as I've stepped away now, I think the thing that for me, I love weddings, but I love Saturdays and I like being out on my bike and hanging out with my friends and doing whatever I want. And I think I look back to my 20s where at this point I photographed like 675 weddings. My Saturdays were just obliterated through so much of my life. And now I would still, and I still shoot weddings when the right ones, I get to be picky now, which is a really not normal position to be in. But I think that the stepping away, as you did purposely for a year, which I don't think a lot of photographers did until COVID. I think just before COVID, I started seeing a few photographers that would do it when they started having kids. And then obviously COVID really kicked in and said, hey, you're going to take a break. And it's been really interesting to see how many people that once you step away from that kind of deep groove of routine of doing it, that it's a good gig. There's a lot to be had from it. It's especially a great gig to learn how to be a photographer in so many different wing it scenarios that you don't control. But I think once you step away from it for a while, if you've been doing it for a minute, it's really hard to go back to that really heavy, aggressive routine of shooting and delivering and working and booking and hustling all the time. Do you foresee yourself ever pivoting again into a big photo space where that's going to be some main means of income, or some other form of it that takes like an art form that isn't anything to do with financial incentives?
I definitely don't see myself doing it as like work, like paid work anymore. I feel like I still take on, work for friends here and there, and I always say like I don't want any money for it. Like, you want to pay for a massage, sure, that's fine, but like I
Ooh, that's a good trade.
don't
I'm going to make a note of that one. I don't think I've ever charged that, but I'm going to start.
but I feel like something about it, I think it like I probably should see a therapist about this, but like something about money being attached to my art, and like find like, my worth being tied to like a financial number, and then my art having to match that. There's something that happened there that like wasn't good for me. And so now, like, anytime if I want to shoot something, I'm like, I'll do it for free, and I do it on my terms, and I get to have like creative control. And there's no pressure of like, we paid you X amount of dollars, now you have to deliver this type of content. Or at least like that's how I would, and no client has ever said that to me, but that's how it would feel in my head.
I think it's
It,
a symptom of being a wedding photographer. You've been doing so for me. I don't like obligatory tasks. Anything that feels obligatory, even if my parents like we have to hang out on this day. Well, now I'm obligated and I don't want to. And so, generally speaking, I don't like obligatory tasks. And I think it's because you had to photograph so many weddings, as did I, where it's an obligation. I have to go do it. There's no getting around it. I have to do it, and it's mostly out of my creative control. Maybe I've gotten to direct them and guide them a bit, but now if I want to do any work that's for fun, for me, well, if anyone else pitches me an idea, wants to put money in my hand, anything like that, well, it turns it into an obligation, and well, I don't want it. It sucks the fun out of it.
I hope to have a creative studio one day for sure.
That would
Like
be
to have
amazing.
like
And
a,
what would that look like?
oh man, I've already got like a Pinterest board with this. It would have massive windows. It would have a lot of paint, even though I'm not a painter, but I like want to dabble in paint and canvases. It'd have lots of natural light. I would have like a massive table where I can get creative and like, put my things out, out there. And I do also like marketing shoots sometimes for companies that, companies that trust me are like, go do whatever you want. They don't even give me any direction. They're like, come back and give us content. And that's where I feel like I really thrive, and I hire models and build a set, and things like that. So I would definitely still want to like shoot in that space, create some sort of, content, have it be my escape, have lots of plants in there. And, I see myself like once, the kids are older maybe, and there's more free time to do stuff like that. Like that is on my bucket list, to have my own studio. It's either going to be in like a downtown loft situation with like massive windows and like lots of beautiful historic architecture, or it's going to be complete opposite. It's going to be in the middle of like a olive tree grove that's like almost like a greenhouse setting. So I'm like, it's either going to be in the middle of nowhere or in the middle of a city, and I can't, like, I'm torn between the two. So
It
maybe
sounds like you just want to make stuff without other people's dictation. And even like what you're doing now with the templates is there was the previous forum where you mentioned Shopify. That seems like you're making stuff, but then you're dealing with this back and forth thing. Now you get to make stuff. No one's really telling you what to do other than maybe the algorithm. And you just get to make whatever you want. And in a studio setting like that, like you mentioned, if you want to paint or craft or shoot work that you want to do, like it genuinely just sounds like you are a maker of things and you want to do it on your own terms.
I think so. And I think, you can never take the artist out of a person. And I think all of us, to some degree are artists, and we show it in different capacities. So I think, that you can't take that away. And I think we are such creative human beings just by nature, with
Yeah,
whatever.
there's a really good quote at maybe the first couple of chapters of Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, and he mentions that creativity shouldn't be this pretentious not notion, and that or gate kept. Everyone is a creative. Like we are currently creating a conversation, and when you break it down to just that really boilerplate, like oh, everyone that you speak with is a creative. It just determines whether or not you want to turn it into a singular focused craft, if you want the external validation or if you want your own. And there's no better or worse than any of those. Me personally, I work for external validation. I've learned that. I'm okay with it. And that's how I operate. But maybe for you, it sounds like it doesn't matter if anyone else likes it. This is like for Angela, which is really cool to know.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with that. And I think, yeah, I will forever be creative in some capacity.
And so, what's your problem? What's your problem right now? What's next? What are you working on?
So I think educating photographers on reels is where we're struggling. Everybody knows that reels are important. Everybody wants the algorithm to make their reels go viral, but there's like a gap between that I feel like is my responsibility, and nobody's placed this on me other than me myself. Um, but I feel like there's this heavy responsibility of educating photographers about like how their reels can get bigger reach and what it means to show up consistently and what types of images do better and how to package that content, right? So what performs well with the algorithm isn't necessarily what photographers want to be putting out, right? They want to share their best images and like a slower slideshow so that everybody has time to like fully experience their content. But unfortunately, sometimes just a 3-second looping video with some heavy text on it is going to perform well. And I feel like I'm in a very unique position where I'm like, okay, well, I created these templates for you guys to use, but it only solves, a portion of the problem with the algorithm and views and engagement. And so then I have this like weight and this responsibility of educating them like what type of content to use. Don't forget to add a hook. Make sure your content is shareable and savable, and educating them on inviting collaborators to posts. And I feel like since you have me on here, I'm going to say this: every photographer should be inviting collaborators to a post on a reel. Like a reel should have multiple collaborators, whether it's your client if they have an Instagram account, is the venue, the location, the planner, florist, anybody that contributed to the reel other than yourself. It's always going to help you improve with engagement. And so within my community, I feel like the problem right now is just trying to educate people. They want more views, but sometimes it's like taking additional steps that you have to do, or thinking creatively about how to package your content, what's going to make it savable and shareable, and educating people consistently. And then photographers also pushing back and being like, well, I don't have time, but I also want views. But like, how do I get more views with your template? And you said to do this, but like I didn't get um the type of engagement that I wanted. And it's almost like it has to be like an individual conversation with every single person in our community to be like, well, let me explain what you're doing wrong, what you could be doing better. And then even after having all these conversations, I can't guarantee results, right? I'm like, well, these are suggestions and I don't exactly know your content and I don't know your audience. And sometimes if you already have built a very dedicated audience that loves everything you post, it's obviously going to be so much easier for your content to get more views and for certain things to get picked up and be shared and become viral, versus maybe somebody even has better content but their audience is not engaged because you lost their attention 4 years ago when you stopped posting on stories or engaging when the algorithm changed and you didn't keep up with that. So then like reviving that audience again is hard. And so basically what a long answer, but we're just stuck in the situation where photographers want a lot of engagement. They don't want to do a lot of work. And we can't predict exactly what's going to go viral or how to make. And then even if I were to give a formula, then photographers are like, but like we don't want to look like everyone else, so our content has to be like unique, and my content has to be first to go viral for this type of reel. So it's very tricky.
People want to be trendsetters but not do the work to explore the trend or explore their own trend. Do you foresee something where you'll start doing, or are you facilitating ideas where it might be, we do big workshops or classes on this, we do one-on-ones, we just start doing it for people again? Is any of that kind of being floated around as a solve for this problem?
Yes, multiple things. So I have kind of been dipping my toes in the education part. I actually have a Reels course that I have on my website that people can buy if they really want to understand like the nitty gritty. But again, like you take the course, it's not going to give you a formula for how to go viral. And I think that's what everybody wants, is a quick fix solution. And this is what's really hurting us, is there's all these reels that are viral that say, use this trending audio and your reel will go viral. And it's like, no, a trending audio will not make your reel go viral just because you're using a trending audio. Like there's so many other components that go into that. And so there's a lot of advice like, use this hook and all of a sudden like your views will skyrocket. And while it may work for a certain amount of time, what also happens is that as an audience, we get really fatigued from seeing the same thing, right? So maybe a specific hook that was doing really well, 6 months ago, was getting people lots of views and was getting like crazy engagement. And so then all of these people start sharing, like, use this hook for more engagement, or a call to action at the end, or see caption for details, things like that, that are working or were working. And then as audience, people that are consuming this content on the other end, we get fatigued from seeing the same stuff. And if we might have responded to it 6 months ago, now we're like, we know better. We know what you're trying to do. And it's not as interesting and it doesn't capture us. And so the trends are constantly changing. And there's, I guess like what I'm trying to say is like, even if we were to release like specific hooks or things that people should be jumping on, it's not necessarily going to create viral content. However, we are.
It's really pushing that they need. No, it's okay. It's really. I mean, I think people need to do their own research too. Like, you can have all the tools. I can learn exactly everything I need to know about a camera and a lens and a lighting and whatnot, but it's really up to me to use that set of paintbrushes to make a thing. And so, but I'll let you carry on with that. But yeah, I think that makes tremendous sense. You just can't hold their hand at every step of the way. It does require you to be creative in your own creative business too.
We do offer reel prompts that we share on our stories regularly. So usually once a week or throughout the month, we will post reel prompts. Like, here, if you're running out of ideas, use this reel prompts to like help, generate ideas. But again, like, we're not sharing these ideas to make your content go viral. And I'm actually against certain type of virality, right? Sometimes if content goes viral with the wrong crowd, like, and you might get like a bunch of new followers, but are they going to convert to paying clients? Are they going to be engaged with all of your other content? Or are they going to actually hurt the algorithm within your account later? Because now you have all these followers that are no longer engaging with the rest of your content. And so it's kind of creating like the opposite effect of what you would hope it would do. So I feel like there's such a big educational aspect to, educating like the photographers to know who exactly is their target client, how to connect with them, how are they spending their time, what kind of language are they using. So as far as, workshops or educational stuff, I'm not 100% sure what we're going to do there yet, but we are working on like exploring that. And we are working on bringing in more resources. So that's kind of the big goal for this year, is to have more resources as far as like real prompts, and try this with your account and see if like this resonates with followers. More educational content within the community, like little tips and things to to kind of help photographers, but I feel like we're also approaching busy season. So we're going to see how that translates again this year, because I feel like I'm kind of gotten pretty comfortable with like predicting what's going to happen. Right now, spring is when photographers are excited about social media. They are finally starting to shoot again. They're putting out reels. It's been quiet. They've rested, and then summer's going to hit, fall's going to hit. All of a sudden, nobody has time to post reels, and that's why I'm like, get set up with reel templates right now in the spring, so you have a system, so you have a flow. And then like once busy season hits, you're able to kind of carry that on, because a lot of times photographers will fall off for 6 months at a time and not post anything, and then come back and hope that their audience is still just as engaged, and it's like you
Yeah, and it's
have
just
to.
not going to work that way. And I think what you guys have done really well, just from kind of skimming things, is like whenever I want to look up trend, like how social media, how Google, how SEO is functioning, I'm met with a never-ending list of like random blog posts, articles, and things. But what you guys have done really well, I think, is not just gone for like the like clickbait 10 things you need to do for SEO, because you're not focused on that so much as you are the actual community that already exists, and to continue to be that educational resource as to like, hey, Meta just changed this, that, or the other. You should be looking at this, that, or so on, and being a good source for a very like niche angle of industry. Obviously, there's tons of creatives, painters, sculptors, photographers, you name it on Instagram, but for you guys to be focusing so specifically on photographers and reels and how to use that as a tool, I think that that's so huge, and it will continue to be this really huge beneficial platform for our industry to work in.
And I appreciate you saying that so much, because I feel like I personally struggle with this. It's sometimes so tempting to create a clickbait title, how to go viral on Instagram, right? Because everybody's going to want to see, everybody's going to want to read. If I create a little video that says how to go viral, press down to read, or like see caption for details, and I just put a bunch of fluff in there, it's really easy, to get those views. But I feel like at the core, like one of my values is to just stay honest and transparent and keep educating the photographers on like you're not there's no like get rich quick solutions here, right? And I don't know if that's the right term, but like you're
No,
not
and
gonna.
it's the same for your side. Like you could do the viral thing and clickbait and try to gather a bunch of new users and new people, but I think that like the low and slow or slow and steady approach is to focus on creating more benefit for the people that are already involved with your product or your community or whatnot, and giving those people the tools so that they continue to do what they're already doing, which is this really great word of mouth process, and bringing more people on and speaking with them at WPPI and finding out that it's really beneficial for them, versus getting 10,000 clicks on one of your articles and getting 4 new people that paid for your product.
Yeah, and I agree. And I struggle with this too, because I'm like, I just, sometimes it's easier to just like create content that will work with the algorithm, because I'm like, it will, yeah, it will perform and it will get the views and the but I also want to make sure that we just stay true to like educating and exactly what you just said.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a really cool tool. I wish there had been, I remember when Instagram story, Snapchat templates were coming out. I knew there's a few photographers that sold some PSD templates. And whenever stuff like that comes out, I'm such an efficiency nerd. And I'm always like, how can I make this not suck? How can I put this into my flow, use an app, a third party something, a hotkey on my computer? And you guys have really done that in a really cool way. You've turned what is arguably a laborious, tedious process and kind of a creative thing that people don't necessarily want to do. I don't want to make Instagram reels. I just want to post photos. And you've taken that away and made it really, really simple, which I think is super powerful.
So my question for you, are you ever going to get into video content on Instagram? Like
You
where are you
know,
at?
maybe there's a lot of stuff that I'm inspired by, and I'm potentially moving later this year to New York, and I would be moving in with one of my really close friends who's a really talented videographer. So I foresee him and I maybe doing some things together. But the truth be told, I don't want to buy the gear. I don't want to buy the storage. I don't want to buy the batteries. I don't want to learn how to shoot, because the photo work I produce, toot my own horn here, is really freaking beautiful, and it's always been really good, and it kind of comes effortlessly from me, which is a really lucky position because I've done it for so long. My dad was a photographer, so I've just been in it or around it forever. Video is literally square one, and I'm just not interested in sucking at something for a long time in the creative space. I'd rather go take that time to go learn. I really want to learn to sketch. I'd really like to be able to sit at like Union Station and just like draw people really quickly on a pen and paper. I'd rather take the time to learn that because I think it'll make me feel better than to learn video with the end result being I made a thing so that someone could watch it on a 3-inch screen. I'd be more intrigued by learning to be like a director of photography on a TV show or a movie and getting to be a piece of a final project rather than the guy that makes the whole thing. I just, it doesn't intrigue me that much. And so going viral, making stuff for people to like it on Instagram isn't a way that my mental health soars very well. I know that that makes me feel good for a minute, but it does not make me feel good for a long time when I can't keep reaching back into it to grab more of it. So I'd rather just be a participant in other people's video creations and appreciate when it looks really good. I'm pretty low patience. If you hand me a wedding video, I am not going to watch it. I don't even watch my friends' videos when they make them. I'm like, nope, I know it's 3 minutes. I know the template. I don't want to watch this. My photo took 0.2 seconds to look at. Your video takes 3.5 minutes. So I just don't want to. I'd rather make stuff. So I want to focus more on making printed work. Like I'm trying to do an art show this year potentially where I might have half a dozen or a dozen pieces at like 48 by 63, this really large scale print size of my abstract portrait work. And that excites me way more than learning a new creative process with a camera.
I
Or
hear you.
I just want to shoot film. Film has built-in inconsistencies for me. I get to just run around and make stuff and get to see its accidental results later. That touches my long-term dopamine a lot better.
Yeah, I hear you for sure.
So I'm closed-minded and I'm stubborn, and those things have always been the case. but it's funny because I love watching it. Like I've never had TikTok, and I refuse because I want to be on my phone less. And so I see Instagram reels that kind of come up. They match my algorithm for sure. I get bikes and coffee and interior design all the time. And that's good enough for me. I like appreciating it and I like being a consumer of video a lot more.
Yeah, don't we all? I feel like we
Yeah.
all love to consume and, scroll and hang out, but
Yeah,
it's
it's a nice social tool. Like I just to be able to send videos back and forth with my friends and be inspired by things and use it to go, oh wow, I always seek things out on social media that will educate one of my hyperfixations. So if my hyperfixation at the moment might be building a bicycle or learning my espresso machine or currently it's reading actually, well cool. Which one of these things can help me further that, but not distract from it?
And I feel like that's what photographers need to be thinking about all the time, right? How are you
Mm-hmm.
using reels? You're sending it to your friends. Like you just said it, like things that
Yep.
resonate, you send to your friends or you bookmark to revisit a place later. And photographers really need to understand how people are consuming
Yeah.
reels. And I think that's where they're stuck is they're not understanding how people are consuming that content. If
Yep.
more photographers made that connection, I feel like the way they approach reels would change.
I think it's not dissimilar to like when you build a website, you want to look at the website like, for lack of a better word, a dumb person. How would a dumb person navigate this website? And if you are navigating it only as the person that made it, well, of course you know how to get around it, but potentially it's not very intuitive. And so I don't look at or share any photography related reels unless it might be like a film camera thing. But otherwise, I don't look at any of it or share it because I am not the consumer of photo reels. And so if I'm a photographer, I need to go, who is the consumer of photo reels? And that's who I need to market for. So my bride is some girl who's 27 and lives in Seattle and she just got engaged and she probably makes way more money than me. I need to put myself in her shoes in order to get her money for my work or booking or whatever. I can't put myself in the shoes of my photographer friend across town because that's not my client.
Yep, yep. And so then you would think, what is she potentially looking for right now? She's probably thinking about venues, So your reel could be, my 5 favorite venues in Seattle that I've shot at. And there you go.
Yeah,
That's how
and
you connect with them.
you've got the most powerful tool of all, which is the visual medium. And so,
Yep.
from venues to coordinators, planners, florists, whatever it may be, just in the wedding space, well, you've got all the tools. You've got all the photos. You own all the photos. You've got the thing to totally gain traction in. And so, I would see that a lot in the photo industry. I was kind of notorious on Facebook groups for picking fights with people when they would post work that everyone else said was great. I'm like, actually, that doesn't look very flattering. It doesn't make them look good. That one photo is going to be kind of a dent in the rest of your gallery, so maybe scrap it. I know you love it, but it's not about what you love. It's about what they love. And I always took that approach with my work, and I think that all photographers need to do that. If you think for any reason that the other person, the consumer side of this, might not love it, even if you love the crap out of it, don't show it, don't share it, don't use it. It's not about you. Now, if you want to be an artist who doesn't make money, if you just want to be an artist who makes stuff for the thrill of it, dude, go for it. Do whatever you want. But if you're in a consumer-based artist medium, it's just not about you. And you can do it all,
Absolutely.
you can be about you, but you're probably not, unless your taste is really, really good, you might not make any money.
Yep, absolutely. I say this all the time. Like, you have to be creating for your viewers and not for yourself. Yep.
Yeah. I run into that with people so often. And again, I'm the non-sugar coder. So I'll go, hey, I know you love this, but I don't think your taste is very good, so it doesn't really matter. That's why you're. I've
Shots
watched
fired.
photographers. I've watched photographers do that like Southwest super saturated yellow Simpson skin tone thing for a while, and complain that their clients weren't liking it and asking them to re-edit it. Well, hate to tell you, maybe your taste sucks. Maybe you should pull it back because your clients are the one that pay your bills.
Yep,
Like to be
absolutely.
angsty about it. But all in all, yeah, I think it's such a complicated time, and you mentioned a few things there that I think are so strange now, where it's like I don't want to look like everyone else, but I want to have a viral trend, and that's such a strange road our capitalist society has taken us down in order to make stuff that we got into, usually in the beginning because we just like making stuff. And so I think finding a balance in that, and you have such a cool tool that balances the ability to like make cool stuff but not be worn down by the tediousness of it.
Yeah, and photographers, no, there's very few photographers that are like, I want to make reels. Like,
Yeah.
they don't want to be making
Yeah,
reels,
nobody's that stoked about it. We're just
Yeah.
doing it because the internet told us. I saw, and I hope it's real. I saw somebody mention something about TikTok Notes, that they're going to make an app that's focused on images, and that excites me because I think, well, cool, maybe Instagram will refocus its target on more image-based things, and I hope that becomes a thing, or maybe they split off and it becomes. It'd be really funny if Instagram decided a new app that was just photo focused, but it wouldn't surprise me. And I'm stoked for that. I like high quality photos, and so I'm stoked that maybe that might get to be an attention again.
Yes and no. So I feel like yes, you like photo stuff, yes, but you also are consuming so much video content now that I feel like as humanity we don't even realize that that's how we're consuming everything now. So Instagram, when it was originally a thing, what was it? How many years now? 10 years? Um we didn't have the streaming capabilities that we have now, and it was almost like that's all we knew, and that was enough for us to hit our um levels of dopamine or whatever we were trying to get from social media. And now if you were to take away all the video, I feel like people wouldn't adjust well. And even though we think we want a social media that is photo heavy, I don't know that as a society we would be able to like really adjust that well. So although people keep talking about it, from I guess like my prediction is it's only going to keep being more and more video heavy because our internet is faster, our attention spans are shorter and things like that. And so to keep feeding that, I feel like it has to keep staying in that video format. However, we are seeing a big shift towards long form video. So I think that's what you're going to see a lot in 2024, 25 is longer form videos. that keep the viewer watching the same, creator longer. And talking videos and more like vlog style content is coming back because people are
Yeah, which
exhausted.
I'm stoked for. I'm a big fan of nutritional content, and I think nutritional content is when it's been really well thoroughly investigated. You think of a journalistic something or other, something that's taken 6 months of research versus like 6 minutes. And I think that long form video has a lot more opportunity for nutritious content. Also, bad stuff. Reality TV exists, but you get both. Whereas if you're under 90 seconds, I think the majority of it can sometimes be beneficial or nutritious, but for the most part, it's kind of flash in the pan. And so I'm, as much of a consumer of video, I'm also an upset consumer of video. I don't want to be, but I would be looking forward to that long form taking approach, because that's the kind of stuff I tend to watch, is things that are 10 to 5 to 30 minutes. The 5 to 30 minute spot is like, ooh, there's a lot there. There's probably something really great I can actually find benefit for my life with versus just to pass the time.
Yeah. I'm not sure 30 minutes would make it to Instagram quite yet.
No, I don't think they're either. But that's just like, I mean, that's more of a YouTube space, and that's where I watch things like that. But Instagram and whatnot, I think things in the multi-minute space, I feel like are going to be really, really beneficial, but also really beautiful. I think beautiful short films live in the sub 10-minute space, and that's stuff that can get created. And there's still really beautiful 90-second films too, but more story can be told in these 10-minute chunks. So I think it'll be really cool.
And people that will, I think, adjust to this and adapt to this quickly early on will probably do really well. And then everyone else that can't or won't want to create content will just kind of, it's going to be interesting to see how that all evolves.
It'll be another shift. If you don't adapt, I mean, just like film to digital and photos to video and video to short form video, if you don't adapt quickly and you're like me and you complain about it, you just won't succeed in it.
But I'm also not one that to be like, I want to be a content creator and I want to be making long form videos. Like I actually don't. I actually wish I could not be on social media if I don't want to be, So it'll probably create like a pretty interesting shift here soon.
Finding the healthy balance is definitely the important part. But thank you so much for your time today. This has been really great. It's really, I think your platform is super cool from the moment James and you and I got a chance to speak about it, and Zach and whatnot. But thank you for the time today, and it's really cool to see. I'm really excited to see it continue further. And there's going to be links in the show description of this for anybody listening that you can grab onto it and go check it out. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me, and I loved getting to meet James at WPPI. That's actually where we connected. He's been so great, and I think what you guys are doing for the community is also, so helpful and beneficial. But thank you so much for having me today. Appreciate it.